At Philip's house, the two families settled into the study before dinner. The atmosphere in the room was tense, as everyone anticipated the arrival of Uncle and the unknown guest. "I'm just going to go up to my room to get something," Jessie declared. She wanted to take a little walk down the hallway to shake off the nervousness of the other family members. "But come back in a minute," Anna instructed her daughter, who just nodded slightly in agreement. Cuddly was lying in the hallway under the stairs, licking her paws. Jessie crouched down and easily got onto all fours with her. "You're so beautiful. Come here." Cuddly stretched and obediently climbed onto Jessie's lap. Jessie snuggled comfortably with her uncle's cat under the stairs and leaned against the wood-panelled wall. No sooner had her back touched the wall, however, than it gave way under her pressure, and she toppled over into the opening of a small tunnel. She lay motionless momentarily, the unexpected fall having unnerved her. Cuddly, whom she still held in her arms, quickly broke free from her grasp and fled away. Jessie looked around and saw a hole at the end of the short tunnel. She carefully got on all fours to the opening and peered inside the room. She saw the legs of furniture and noticed the parquet floor. She didn't recall seeing parquet floors anywhere else in the house, which struck her as odd. "Don't worry, I'll be tactful," she heard from the hallway. Jessie froze as an unfamiliar voice came from behind her. She turned around, but no one was there. She began to quietly back up on all fours to the tunnel entrance. She didn't want anyone to find her here. She waited a moment before she ventured out. There was no one else in the corridor, and she managed to close the miniature door. It had a round cutout in the middle that made it easy to grip. The door clicked, sealing the tunnel tightly as if it had never been there, and the intact wall reappeared before Jessie. All shaken up, she returned to the study. "Thank you for weighing in here to clarify a few things," Patrick was saying, and Jessie realised that the voice in the hallway must have belonged to their expected visitor. Sitting on the sofa next to her uncle was a smartly dressed gentleman in a shirt and trousers, a little younger than Philip. His short blonde hair and moustache were mostly covered in grey. His fringe reached to his prominent eyebrows, under which small mouse-like eyes peeked out. Next to the slender uncle, he looked massive and majestic. "That's not worth mentioning. My name is Martin McMahon. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person." "Did you know our mother?" Patrick asked cautiously. "Yes, I knew both your mother and father. Mary was one of the prettiest girls in the village, and Roger used to be my best friend. Both your parents were very dear to me," Martin replied. "I don't recall my parents ever mentioning your name," Patrick continued doubtfully. "That's possible. We haven't seen each other in years. In fact, I can say that it was my doing that your parents were together. I introduced them myself. Our parents loved each other very much. I don't understand why our mother would want a divorce." Patrick ignored Martin's comment. "Mary confided in me on that fateful day she lost her life. She knew I had warm feelings for her for years. She told me she'd made a mistake and didn't love Roger anymore," Martin added. "Do you mean you were the love of her life?" Martin was getting on Evelyn's nerves from the moment he entered the study and joined the conversation. His whole presence had been exceedingly annoying to her. "You have a very good observation. I was her true love. Your father took her from me. I think that's why you've never heard of me." Martin snapped at Evelyn and looked at her angrily. His eyes narrowed. There was a deafening silence in the room as Martin's confession shattered the image of a happy family and beloved parents. Martin is not your enemy. On the contrary, he wants to clarify a few things for us, said the uncle, who for the time being had remained silent. Suppose it's true, Tom began tactfully, earning a frown from both Patrick and his wife. I don't see any reason why you should tell us now, given neither of them is alive. I myself learned the true nature of things recently, when I mentioned to Martin here that I was looking for your father. Martin confided in me that Mary had sought him out at a class party and confirmed her decision to get divorced. I don't see why it's important that we know it anyway. Tom didn't give in. I didn't know anything was bothering Mary so much. She must have been so upset then. I suppose if I hadn't let her drive and talked to her more, I'm sure I could have done something to help her, and she would still be with us. I want you to know the truth. I feel the pain of remorse for letting Mary go to the party from which she didn't return, Uncle said quietly. What was the reason for the divorce? Our parents seemed very happy, Patrick objected. Your mother found out about Roger's infidelity. That's a good reason to stop loving someone and want a divorce. I believe she felt guilty because she knew I loved her and she chose Roger. She apologized for rejecting me and causing me pain. I think she was going through hell herself alongside an unfaithful husband, Martin argued combatively. Johnny looked at his father after Martin's statement. One look at his pale, stony face was enough to guess how he must be feeling. Suddenly, a wave of hatred washed over him towards Martin for daring to slander his beloved grandfather. He was about to say something, but Jessie stopped him in time and whispered, Stay out of the adults' business. I found something in the hallway and I want to show it to you. Susan, the housekeeper, came into the study and announced that dinner was ready. The heavy atmosphere had partly dissipated as the idea of a delicious meal made everyone forget for a moment the recent conversation. Jessie and Johnny managed to stay behind. Everyone had already left the study, and Jessie checked that no one was in the hallway. She and Johnny made their way to the bottom of the stairs, and she carefully felt the cutout in the door that opened the entrance to the tunnel. How did you find it? Johnny asked, stunned, looking back cautiously. Stop asking questions. We only have a few minutes before they start looking for us. We have to be quick. The tunnel leads to a room, but I'm not sure where it is. You mean it's a secret room? I don't know. Would you like to take a look? Jessie tried to appear calm, but everything inside her was boiling with impatience. Johnny nodded, and the two of them made their way on their knees through the tunnel to the opening leading into the room. Johnny squeezed in past the legs of the table and chair. Jessie was right on his heels. The room was shrouded in darkness because there was no windows. Johnny instinctively felt for the switch on the wall and flipped on the light. There wasn't much room, but the space didn't feel cramped. A bookcase filled to the ceiling with books covered one wall. It resembled the bookcase in Uncle's study, but was much smaller. Opposite the bookcase was a built-in cabinet that took up part of the wall. A massive desk with drawers on either side and a padded chair safely concealed the secret entrance to the tunnel. Do you know what I'm thinking? Jessie asked. I can't read minds. I think this is our uncle's real office. He has a desk here, the one missing from his big study. I just don't understand why it's hidden and where this room is actually located. You might be right, but there must be another entrance. It's hard to believe that a man of his age would climb in here through a tiny tunnel ending under the desk, don't you think?" said Johnny, forcing a smile. The image of his old uncle climbing through the tunnel on his knees, dragging a stick behind him, flashed before his eyes. "You're absolutely right," Jessie grinned at her brother's comment. Johnny then turned his attention to the desk, where nothing lay. When he tried to open the top drawer, it didn't budge at all. He tugged on the handle of another drawer, reaching the end of the row. He then tried the other side, but despite his best efforts, he was met only with failure. "We need to find the key. It's locked," Jessie said. "You go search the closet. I'll look around the bookcase," Johnny ordered. He turned to the bookcase himself and began looking through the spines of the books. He thought to himself that if his uncle had read even a third of the titles in his bookshelves, he must be a very learned and clever man. Meanwhile, Jessie opened the large closet with a sigh. The right-hand part, used for hanging clothes, was empty. The other half was all shelves from ceiling to floor, with unidentifiable junk on them. "Did you find anything?" she called over her shoulder, closing the closet again. Instead of Johnny's reply, however, she heard her cousin's voice coming from down the tunnel towards them. "We have to go now. We've been here for a long time. The others are looking for us," Jessie said, walking over to Johnny, who was still quiet and holding something in his hand. "Look what I found." Johnny handed his sister the open book. It had caught his eye a moment ago because it had no writing on the spine, just a key mark engraved on it. Jessie picked up a book made of 2 wooden boards. A cavity was carved inside, with a key squeezed into it. She carefully took it out and tried to open the top drawer of the desk with it. She immediately looked disappointed as the key in the lock refused to turn. "Brother, wrong key. Try the other side," Johnny instructed. Jessie tried to unlock the drawer. Nothing happened for a moment, but then the lock suddenly clicked. She opened the drawer and found a blue notebook lying on top of the writing utensils. Johnny picked it up and opened it. "It's half full with notes. We don't have time to read it here. Do you know what? We'll borrow it for a while." Johnny closed the drawer, returned the key to the wooden book, then slid it into its place in the bookcase. After a little while, they both emerged from under the stairs and headed for the dining room, where Susan was already serving chicken soup. "You know not to dawdle. Everybody's been waiting for you quite a while with dinner. Where have you been? I sent Chris after you, but he couldn't find you anywhere," Anna said sternly. Johnny absently clutched the blue notebook hidden under his shirt, not knowing what to say. Jessie was in a similar position, lowering her eyes and staring at her feet under the table. Johnny looked quizzically at his mother. "Don't be angry. We were just out for a while." "Really? Where have you been?" "I was looking for you in the study, upstairs in your room, and outside the house," Chris whispered to Jessie, who was sitting at the table next to him. "We went out the back exit to see Cuddly. She's so playful. We got held up with her for a bit," Jessie replied with a sigh. Chris frowned at his cousin's answer, but didn't bother her with any more questions. Jessie sighed as her tactic worked. Sometimes she pretended to be naive in front of the boys at school to keep them quiet and not to ask her to help with maths. "As you can see, Chris is no different than my classmates," she thought triumphantly as she started eating her dinner hungrily. Johnny also started to eat, not paying attention to the surrounding events. His uncle's blue notebook pressed against his body, and he couldn't wait to read it later. He was still wondering how he could get into the secret room other than through the tunnel. He and Jessie would have to do some more investigating. After a brief consideration, he concluded that they would keep the discovery to themselves for the time being.